What's good, YouTube? We're back today with another top 10 video. It's going to be the top 10 decks of this format. I bounced my mind off of Billy Break, and then I bounced it off DZ for a second, and we came up with this top 10 list of decks that you should be playing probably in this format. We didn't come up with anything else, so do tell me. If you think we missed any decks, put them down in the comments below and we'll talk about it. But with the hit of Daigusto Emerald, a lot of the degenerate FTK decks did get sliced up a bit, so I'm going to exclude those for now. But tell me if there's anything that continues consistently with Daigusto Emerald missing for that second Firewall Dragon. My first honorable mention here is Dante and the Burning Abyss, mainly because they show up and surprise us in many formats. I don't think there's been a single format where I just see someone not summon a Dante, but I don't know if they'll be summoning them in the top cut until that Link monster comes out, thanks to Master Rule 4. Blue Eyes White Dragon surprises us time and time again, also in formats, topping some random regionals here and there. I don't know that it'll be topping YCS's, which is why it's hanging out in the honorable mentions, but I've seen Invoked variants try to get really good. I've seen people get really creative with this deck. I wouldn't count it out. And people are going to be dusting off their old hollowed out Mermail Atlantean decks, of course. My Starboy's coming, they're getting some legacy support, but I like my top 10 decks a lot more than these. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into our top 10 decks here. And the first on the list, Johnny Asian Persuasion made it look good with Full Power Zoo and Draco. It's the Cosmo deck. Abusing Full Force Virus, it's gonna hit almost every single deck in this top 10 and do its job really well. I think big untargetable ships offer a bit of consistency, but you still have your brick hands, which is why it's so far down my personal list. But a lot of people value it highly. The deck doesn't have any reprints, so I think there's a lot of pro duelists such as Blair Hunter and Yuri that managed to make this deck look really good, and they might be making a comeback with it. If Johnny, one of the people who consistently topped regionals last year, he was top 5 on that list, is taking faith in this deck and playing it and taking first at a regional with Full Power Draco and Zoo, I think it's a contender for continuing to stand up to True Draco, but ABC does kind of have a few choice words for this deck, I feel, and if both Cosmo and ABC are big, we might see System Down return into side decks. In the number 9 position, it's a deck you shouldn't be sleeping on. It's Spirals. Spirals actually have these really cool combos already, even before they've received their Link monster, that let them go into a sleeper equipped with the Last Resort and do crazy things turn 1. They do lack a little bit of consistency, and you're not always going to call that top card of their deck right without a drone, but I think there's so many cool things that this deck does and offers even before it receives its Link monster. I've seen it in high DB rated, which isn't speaking much compared to the meta, but I've seen players like Cody Angeloff make this deck look really nice and good. So I just can't discount it. I can't say no, I wouldn't be taking a Spiral deck to a tournament. I think that it's a viable option. Quick Fix and Machine Dupe didn't get hit at all on the ban list, and it's something you could see top some regionals even before it receives its Link monster. Heck, let's pay attention to the UDS and see what happens with this deck. In the number 8 slot, I put it at the number 1 on my sleeper decks for the ban list, but it's still really hurt. Paleozoics, I'm sorry, but with Masterpiece still at 3, I think it's this far down the list, guys. Masterpiece is just a struggle for this deck to get over. It fights it so hard when it's been tributed on top of a trap, and True Dracos are very much alive. The consistency is there. You've lost no diagrams, no masterpieces. The consistency of that deck to get Masterpiece out and then lean on other engines is still going to be insane, and that's just the bane of this deck. But with Starboy coming out, tip that top hat, you'll be able to be setting up with Double Toad and Dupe Block and do a lot of really cool things to try to prevent your opponent from ever doing anything, and it's going to counter a lot of the rest of the meta very well. With ABC prevalent in the meta upcoming, I think that Paleozoic has a chance. We've seen Paleozoic stuff ABC in its own format where ABC was supposed to be the deck, and then it kind of became the Paleozoic alongside Metal Foe show. So we'll see where that's headed, but for now, it's this far down on my list. And in the number 7 is my personal favorite. I really wanted to put it up higher. And if you've been watching the streams, you already know. The Pendulum Magicians. Don't discount this deck at all. Its price is so low, but it does so much. And moving forward, you're not going to need Zoo, and you're not going to be fighting Zoo. It's going to be beautiful. And it even got a buff on this ban list with Wavering Eyes. Can you just imagine Wavering Eye popping 2 scales, getting searches on top of your searches? Iris gets this effect when popped by Wavering Eyes for its monster effect to search out your Pendulum Graph cards, and it is going to be busted. I think we might see some crazy return of Wavering Wars in the mirrors, because after you learn that it's the mirror game 1, you might stop using this proactively and start using it reactively. So it's going to be really skill intensive to watch these mirror matches as they grow up, and it's already proven that it can handle Zoo and Draco. It's hit the top cut of YCS's spottily here and there throughout, or was it just Nationals? I don't know, but it's definitely proven itself to be a contender within a format that had the monstrous decks at full power, and I think with some new support, it's looking pretty nice. Pretty nice indeed. And the number 6 slot is the World Chalice. It got a huge buff with this ban list with Rescue Rabbit, but it also did take a hit with the loss of Emerald in some senses, although not too many decks were concentrating on Emerald and getting back your rank 3 normals in this deck. I do want to say that World Chalice overall is looking real nice. I think that its main problem still is dealing with Masterpiece as well. This deck struggles with that so much. An established Masterpiece, they just seem to not have outs very often. We lost some board wipes, we lost some consistency to help deal against Masterpiece, so they're going to have to run cards that make them inconsistent against other decks mayhaps in order to deal with that. But they still set up very strong boards with triple Firewall, and I'm going to put an asterisk by this number 6 slot and say that I want to include Firewall decks in general in the number 6 slot, but I feel like World Chalice is the deck that kind of does it best right now, and I really like what it does and where it's going. So the non-targeting removal of Ningrisu, that's pretty good. And in our number 5 slot, we have the Wind Witch Invoked specifically here. I would say Invoked variants, but I don't think many other variants stand up to what the Wind Witches can do, except combining it maybe with our number 4 slot. But definitely, I would like to say people tend to go to this build in metas where you have the Crystal Wing and you're setting up behind it. We've seen them start to adapt with some Link monsters for a few of the decks, but I don't know how Link ready it is. Once you set up that Crystal Wing turn up one, you're giving away the ability to make fusions, and your opponent kind of has the time to come back on you. But I think this deck offers really nice consistency, and usually by turn will set up how it wants. But I still see the problems in its gameplay. Also, I like that it's one of the decks that really gets to play back row as well. And our number 4 slot is the Bling Burn Trick Stars. Oh yeah, I really like this deck, and it is at full power. And I've seen invoked variants with this that do very, very well. They're able to run set rotation. They have options for either their light stage or their meltdown, but I specifically like the one that's taking away the hand or trying to burn for Nth. I think having that second win con of just taking your opponent's hand away is really powerful, and that didn't get hit at all here, whereas in the OCG, we already saw Reincarnation go down to 1 because of what a problem they thought it might be after their ban list. So I would not like, disregard Droll and Lock Candina, like being able to go and get your Reincarnations and just perhaps get rid of your opponent's whole hand. Yeah, you can't be ignoring that, guys. It's definitely going to be a huge problem in this meta. But in the number 3, perhaps the most consistent deck in my mind, but perhaps not the best in setup, it's Lightsworn and variants such as Lightsworn Zombie. Charge the Light Brigade back at 3 actually did add a huge level of consistency. You're almost always going to be able to get your Solar Recharge off now, it feels like. So, I just want to say, yes, you're running a few more bricks in this deck, but now your bricks are all even more useful. I think the zombie variants are specifically what I like, because Unizombie to me is one of the best cards ever printed. It's an insane card. It's a tuner. It gets your engines going. With Solitaire, this deck is just so insane. You're loading the graveyard already for Fairy Tale Snow. You're thinning your deck already. You're taking cards out of your opponent's hand. And this deck proved itself in a format where ABC was so good. It proved how crucial it could be. But speaking of ABC, that's our number 2 slot. We've said it enough. It's really apparent that this meta is going to have a lot of Busters getting summoned. And Decode Talker, Abe, and Buster, there's so many 2-card combos to make this happen that seem very viable in the deck. You're going to be dealing with not only not being able to target Buster when there's something else behind Talker, but also you're going to just have to deal with how ABC works. It's a really good deck. It's really consistent still. And I think with Masterpiece running around, it's definitely going to be hindering Paleozoics, and I think we've said it enough. I think it's not a spoiler at this point that Masterpiece and the True Dracos are still the number 1 deck. Billy confirmed it with me. He's like, man, they still have 3 Majesty's Maiden, they still have the Blue Boy, they still have Card of Demise. It's just so crazy, all the access. So if you're trying to do for a more control variant, you can go to the Card of Demise version, but I personally like perhaps doing an invoked variant with the spellbooks. This is the true best invoked deck in my opinion for this metagame. You're able to just pop off with so many different spellcasters. It's got so much synergy, so much consistency. You still have 3 Apocalypse in order to tribute during your opponent's turn and disrupt, along with fusions that negate. Oh, it's so freaking good still. And it's going to be a different way. But don't worry, we're not stuck with this for too long. For those of you guys who are like, oh, this is number 1 still. I'm not necessarily right. Billy's not always right. But in my opinion, this is the number 1 until Full Power Spirals come out in Circuit Break. So we're only stuck perhaps about a month and a half, a little bit less with this deck, and that's not too long. I think Spirals will come in and challenge it, and we'll have a nice triangle of this ABC and True Draco. And speaking of ABC, I do feel like the ABC deck does deal relatively well with Masterpiece at times. It's a 3,000 beater, it already gets over him, it forces him, and it's a really good deck to try to handle him, because then the Decode Talker's left, you can stack up behind Decode Talker and take out the Masterpiece. So it should be very interesting to see how the meta envelops and develops. But what do you guys think? Is my number 1 wrong? Are True Dracos just hurt too bad with Knuckles banned and Ignis to 1? And True King's return to 1. Is that too much? Or will 3 Diagram, 3 Masterpiece, and all those other factors, along with the Spellbook engine, along with Invoked, will that become the best deck for now? Thanks for watching. Again, let me know if I missed any decks in this top 10. What is missing from this list? I think we did a pretty good job covering all the possibilities so far so quick, but maybe we did miss something, and let me know if we did. And how would you reorder this list yourself? Does Spiral deserve to be replaced by Mermail for consistency? I know there's a lot of fans of that deck in here.